Welcome back in to the Midtown Madness podcast with Zach Miller and Peter Hale. I'm Zach Miller, and I'm joined by Peter Hale right now. Pete, we've got a big guest coming up on the show. This is easily, I think, either of our biggest interviews.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. We've got a bit of a legend.
It's our first Olympian. Kevin Lisch is joining the show, and we're going to kick it over to that interview right now. Now we welcome to the Midtown Madness podcast our biggest guest in this show's short history, and the interview I've been wanting since starting this whole podcasting journey 3 years ago. He recently concluded an incredibly successful professional career, including an NBL championship, NBL Grand Final MVP, and a trip to the 2016 Rio Olympics with the Australian national team, in which he helped deliver a fourth place finish, the country's best result at an Olympic basketball tournament. You guys know him as number 21, Billiken legend, Kevin Lisch. Kevin, I am beside myself that we made this happen. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thanks so much to you guys. I really appreciate it. And like, I think I said over email, it's always nice to talk to guys from back home. So it's an honor for me.
You've kept that American accent. You haven't switched over being around the Aussies.
I try my best. It's funny when I get home, which hasn't been very often lately. My parents do say it has changed a little bit, but man, you should hear my kids. They sound like little Aussies. Yeah, I mean, there's no hint of American accent in what they say.
That's funny. I mean, I hung around with Cody Ellis a bit in college. So even just then, like I would start using words that he would use. And I can't even imagine living down there for as long as you have. I would have probably completely changed over. You grew up in Belleville, Illinois. You grew up in quite the athletic family. Your dad played at Notre Dame and then in the NFL. What was that like? Just the competition among everybody in the family. I mean, Teresa was an unbelievable athlete in her own right. Dan, great athlete. Was there a lot of fighting? I mean, just athletically in that family?
There was a lot of playing. There was a lot of competitiveness, plenty of tears. But yeah, all the above. I think it's where we learned our lessons about basketball, about life, about so many different things on the court, beating up on each other. Like you say, my older sister, Stephanie, played in college.
Yes.
Younger sister, Teresa, was probably the best basketball player in the family. Then she had to get married, and then my youngest brother, Dan, was really talented as well. And just such a hard worker. So yeah, it was a lot of fun growing up, but yeah, full of everything, really.
Was it always basketball? I mean, your dad was a football player. Was there ever any pressure to play football, or did you guys play anything else, or just specialize in basketball from the start?
Oh, we played soccer and track and field. I played baseball one year. I think it was t-ball. My favorite part was running from the outfield to the dugout. That was the only time I got to run, so that didn't last very long. And then, we played catch with a football around the house and stuff like that. And then I guess really once I got to high school, I just loved playing basketball. So just stuck to that, really.
We're going to have to definitely get us to talk to Teresa, because Teresa is just had just an unbelievable career in her own right at St. Louis University. Is there a sport out there that you guys maybe played around, like tennis, anything you guys played against each other that maybe people don't know about?
Yeah, well, yeah, you mentioned tennis. I think every off season, my dad, my brother, and I would play tennis against each other and would just get after it. It's a great cross training sport and a lot of fun. My dad, brother, and I would play golf every off season in the summers, I remember, and that would get pretty competitive. But it was, none of us were I wasn't great. My brother was good and my dad was, but I was just competitive, So man, everything. We play games where my dad would run around the house, trying to throw tennis balls at us and we'd have to run away. So we just make games out of everything. And it was a lot of fun.
Was your mother the referee, or was she joining in on the competition as well?
My mom did everything, besides play defense and basketball and all that stuff. So I think she was definitely the glue at times. Always had a hot meal ready for us, or our ice cold water in the summer. So she's like a Swiss Army knife. She would do everything, and I think she's the brains behind everything, really.
That's great. You mentioned basketball in high school is when it really took off for you. What was the experience like playing at Althoff?
It was fun. It was interesting. I mean, I remember my freshman year. I played a couple freshman games and then went up to JV, played a couple games there, and then went to varsity and yeah, stuck there. And that time, geez, I don't even know what year that was, probably 2000 or something. Basketball in Southern Illinois was really good. And I just remember the gyms being packed, and you had Belleville East, Belleville West, great players there. You had teams down in Carbondale, Centralia, who had just really great players who went on to, play Division I basketball or professionally. So it was a fun time. And I remember there were lines out the gym, sold out. People couldn't get in, and it was just a fun time, really.
Do you remember any of like the biggest names, the toughest players you played against down there at the time?
Yeah, I always remember guys from like Belleville West. You had JB Jones, Xavier Price,
Hmm.
uh, Robbie Kaiser. It's Centralia. You had Matt Shaw, who I think he might have gone to Carbondale.
Yeah.
Um, you had, there are a bunch of guys down in Carbondale. Justin Dentman, down in Carbondale, who went to Washington, and then I think he's still playing professionally in the G League. Never played against like Blake Ahern, but he was obviously a big name there. He's a bit older than me. Actually, I did play against Blake Ahern in Europe, funnily enough, but I'm getting off track here.
No.
But I just remember it was just a really fun. Tommy Liddell, East St. Louis, So I mean, it was just a fun time of basketball there.
You mentioned Tommy, and I want to get into getting playing against Tommy in high school. But what was your college recruitment like? You played AAU. You did not play AAU, right?
I played AAU for, geez, a couple of years, kind of on and off. I remember the St. Louis Eagles always wanted me to play. I just go to the tryouts for the workouts, really, and then never played for them. And yeah, played for a couple of years, just on and off, but nothing too crazy.
So
You
you would actually like make the team, like try out, make the team, and then kind of thanks anyway,
I,
leave it
I
ahead.
remember doing that one year. Yeah. Yeah. Probably wasn't fair to them too much, but, and then, yeah, we'd get a group of guys, guys who had been cut from these select teams, whatever, put them all together. And then we just go out and play against, the better teams. And it was just fun like that. I didn't necessarily like the AAU system. Maybe it's a bit different now, but I felt like summers were for getting better, and the games are an enjoyment instead of playing 6 games in a day and doing all this stuff. I wasn't about that dog and pony show, really.
So what else were you doing in the meantime? Just a lot of workouts, a lot of like kind of individual training and stuff.
Yeah, every single day in the driveway with my dad. And then with Altoff, we'd have you know summer league games and that kind of stuff. Or I play in different kind of summer league games. But there's a lot of variety. It wasn't so structured where it's just like AAU training, AAU tournaments in Houston, Las Vegas, all this stuff. So I figured we didn't need to do all the traveling to get better.
Well, so that explains the getting better part of it. But what about college recruiting? Do you think not playing puts you at a disadvantage? I mean, I follow recruiting pretty closely and like kind of, tend to get into the weeds in it for our show.
Obsessive would be a correct description.
But I can tell you, it's completely unheard of anymore that someone does not play AAU. It's a given. I actually cannot think of a recruit we've had in years that has not played it.
So I did play a couple tournaments in Chicago, one down in Houston, but everything was kind of hit and miss. And I think you remember in high school reading stuff, like that was probably one of the bigger knocks. Like he hasn't tested himself on the bigger. With that being said, I went to Illinois, got, chance to go there, got an offer from Indiana, went on some. So it wasn't like my name wasn't necessarily getting out there. But at the end of the day, I'd been going to SLU and playing against those guys since I was a freshman in high school. And I mean, I felt at home there.
So you mentioned Illinois and Indiana. Anybody else who was recruiting you or whose campus you visited or anything?
A lot of the Big Ten schools. And then, you get letters from all the other places, and they'd send probably 50 letters to guys in your position anyway. So I always get a kick out of, in high school, you get all excited, you get these letters, and I'm sure there's another 50 guys getting those same letters too.
Any weird stories along the recruitment trail? Any coaches like, calling you in the middle of the night? I mean, we've heard, stories throughout the years of just weird stories about FaceTiming a coach while he's laying in bed. Like anything weird like that go down?
Well, it's funny because not that was that long ago, but it kind of was now. Yeah. I don't even know I think iPhones were, I don't even know if they had come out yet.
Nope. I don't think so.
So like any of that stuff happening, I remember one time getting a letter from Marquette. I still remember it. It said, "Dear Jarrell McNeil." And it was me. So I was like, okay, they're obviously going after this guy too, So yeah, that was probably one of the more interesting ones and oversights on their end. But
I was on the other end of some of that because working as a basketball manager, we did send out quite a few letters. And now that you say that, I'm like, I'm fearing that maybe we didn't hear back from one of those guys because we had his address wrong. But yeah, we used to send out about 100 at a time.
Yeah, wow. So you guys were the brains behind it all.
I don't know about brains. We did the grunt work, I think, is more like
the manpower.
So what about Notre Dame? Was there were they involved at all, being your dad's alma mater?
I got some letters from there, but like I said, I wasn't even too, like, put it this way. I did a visit to Illinois just so I could play against Darren Williams and D Brown.
Yeah.
And in those guys in open gym. I think D Brown actually had a broken foot at the time. But so like all I wanted to do on these recruiting visits, or all we would do, is just make sure they played pickup games. So I got to play, So I think my only actual official visit, like I went to Indiana, played against all those guys and went to a football game there. But I think my only official visit was to SLU, really, from my understanding. And even SLU, I didn't even want to go on an official visit. But I remember Coach Soderberg said, "No, Kev, you got to go on an official visit. We got to take you and, try to do all the bells and whistles and all that." And I was like, all right, great. It's not going to help any, but I'll do that.
So you started the year after I graduated, the season after I graduated. And I remember when Soderberg took out the senior managers, there were three of us at the time, when he took us out for lunch, he took us to Outback Steakhouse on Clayton. I think he liked to take the foods there. So he loved that Outback on Clayton by the Esquire. But anyway, he sat us down and he's like, "I'm in a good mood today. Kevin Lisch just committed. You guys, you've done hard work for 4 years. Order anything you want. I'm in a great mood."
I hope you enjoyed that meal.
Yeah, I definitely vividly remember that. But so how was your official visit different than, any other campus visit?
I think I stayed overnight in a hotel in St. Louis. Let's see what else. We went out to eat. Geez, I don't remember. I think they had like a cake in there for me and just
Was it
little
a,
stuff.
was
I
it
think
a,
at Deck there was like welcome Kevin and all that stuff.
yeah. We used to get
And
those cookie cakes. Was it a cookie cake?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
This is the most
Um,
wholesome official visit I've ever heard of.
yeah, like to be honest, I don't remember much of it. I mean, everything was in West Pine still at that time, and um, what else probably got a tour of the facility. I don't know how it was different, to be honest. Um, but it was kind of anticlimactic because I had a pretty good idea I was going to go to SLU anyway. So
What was the clinching factor in the end for committing to SLU over like Illinois?
um, I think it was a lot the ability to be able to and make an impact pretty soon, which I think, if you can't do that to recruit, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either, because you get to learn the ropes and that kind of stuff as well, and be patient, develop. But I think my situation, it was a situation where I had a chance, for 4 years to really, make an impact, and being hometown, just knowing a lot of those guys from playing against them since I was a freshman in high school, and feeling comfortable with, the coaching staff. It was just kind of a natural progression for me.
So the other member of your incoming class, Tommy Riddell, did you know each other well from your high school days? I think he was a class older than you, but then he did a prep year and then came back,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken. And I want to say like UNLV was involved people thought he might go there for a minute. Did you have conversations with him heading into SLU, or was it just more circumstantial?
It was more circumstantial, and then after we both committed, I remember, yeah, I think calling him up, and yeah, he came and we worked out together and stuff, and throughout our journey we became really good friends, and I love Tommy, just because we went through a lot of the same stuff together. I remember calling up Dwayne Polk to come over to Belleville, and we worked out a bit as well. So, but yeah, I knew all those guys. Anthony Drea, my freshman year, him and Soderberg wouldn't even let us do drills together because we'd fight every time, and we became like the best friends, Um, but yeah, geez, just talking about this is bringing back some memories. But Tommy and I probably didn't know each other that well going in, but obviously after the fact knew each other really well.
You mentioned Anthony Drea. I have got Anthony Drea holds a special place in my heart. He was one of my favorites. He was at SLU right when I was coming into my adolescence, and so I looked up to him from the standpoint of tough kid, maybe undersized, but is just a workhorse. Give me a good story about one of these fights. I want to hear about it.
Well, Coach Soderberg would always have these boxing out drills. And one guy, the coach, I think, would shoot the ball. You had a guy on the baseline who would run to the free throw line to box the other guy out. And him and I had no care for where the ball was. It was just like, let's just see who can take the other one to the ground first. And that obviously became a theme. He was a senior, I was a freshman. It was kind of a test. I think both of us, same positions. And then finally Soderberg was like, okay, you guys can't do this together. But I think after we got through those initial first weeks of just really, competing against each other, which that continued, we really had a respect and a really great relationship with each other. We cut each other's hair and, that kind of stuff. So which his hair wasn't that hard to cut. We both
No, no,
shaved
no.
our heads.
You
so
had
it was-
the easier job. Yeah.
yeah.
Your freshman year, you come in to a the previous season I think was 9-21, and your first season's kind of crazy because there's a big transition going on. You guys are going into the A10. Your freshman year, you come in and make an impact: 11 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 16-13 overall, 10-6 in the A10. Finished third. You and Tommy came in as a highly regarded local pair. Did you guys feel any extra pressure being local and kind of being expected to come in and impact immediately?
I think maybe there is an aspect of it. There's also probably an aspect of kind of being naive to the college system and in the demands and in how important it is to win, I guess, in a way. I think Tommy had a quicker start to his college career than I did. He started right away. I was coming off the bench. There are a couple games where I probably only got a couple minutes, and then all of a sudden, something clicked for me, and I started to really find my way a bit more. And then I think from that point on, probably midway through that freshman year, we really just started to feed off each other a lot. And then we also had some, Ian Boyukis.
Mhm.
So we had a lot of talent. Luke Meyer, all those guys. And geez, there's so many names that I can still, Justin Johnson, Vashawn Newborn, all those guys that it was just a lot of fun. Dwayne Polk.
You mentioned Polk. Polk and Meyer were the class ahead of you, and you can kind of see what Soderbergh is doing, building that roster. Looking back at it, did you guys notice that you guys had a ton of St. Louis guys? I mean, I don't think there's been that many St. Louis guys again until very, very recently.
Yeah, I mean, now that you say it, I probably never even looked at it like that with, Luke being from Washington, Missouri, Dwayne, from right there in St. Louis, and, Tommy and myself, even Dustin McGuire when he came in, Adam Nolmeyer, you go back to those guys as well. So yeah, there were quite a few. And I definitely see Paul Eckerly.
Mhm.
I definitely see what what he was doing, and I think he got halfway to where he wanted to to get it, and then things changed, obviously.
You guys played a game at the Dean Dome at UNC that season. Do you remember that experience? What was that experience like?
Yeah, I remember so I was coming off the bench at that time still, and we started out really slow. And I remember coming in that game and actually giving a little spark, and we I think we were up by maybe 3 at halftime, or we might have been down by 3, or it was right
We were up
around
3.
there.
Yeah, up 3.
And then what was the score at halftime? Do you have it?
34-31.
Okay, there we go. And then I remember it was just a cool atmosphere, packed house, and Tyler Hansbrough, a lot of David Noel, I think a lot of those guys, maybe Danny Green, but and then I think we ended up probably losing by 20 or so. But it was such a fun experience. I do remember that, and definitely a learning experience for us.
I'll have to, I know I have the video of that game. I thought I put it on YouTube, but it's not there. I don't know what happened to it, but yeah, I remember watching that game. And what was it like going up against Hansbrough? Him being, I mean, even from the area, and then, obviously him being kind of the darling of that team.
Well, it's funny. My first time playing against Tyler Hansbrough, I was probably in 2nd or 3rd grade, and it was a tournament in Farmington, Missouri. I remember.
Oh yeah.
Out of all places, and that might have been where he's from. But anyways, we played it, and I was like, oh, this dude's pretty good. He's pretty tough. And then I played against him again at my sophomore year in high school at the Nike camp, which was being held at St. Louis U.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, remember playing him in college. Just he was like a bull in a china ring, just tough and just worked his butt off, really.
That you guys actually got to go to Hawaii and play the Rainbow Warriors in Hawaii. Any funny stories, fish out of water stories? I know or I talked to Jeff Harris, and I think Jeff Harris told us about them getting caught out in a ripped current, and they had no idea what to do. Anybody get into trouble in Hawaii, or have any fun off the court?
Let's see. In Hawaii. So my aunt and uncle actually live in Hawaii. So I remember they came to Honolulu, and I got to spend time with them on the beach and stuff. And then I think the main thing I remember about Hawaii, we played terrible, we lost. I remember they had the best fans. Someone spilt like a drink or something on the ground, and I forgot who the manager was at the Peter, you might know. Was it one of the Weiss brothers at the
Well, there was
time?
Mike Weiss. There could have been Brendan Muchak.
Or Brendan Muchak. It was Brendan Muchak because he got down on his hands and knees to wipe up the water, back and forth with the towel. And then as he was going back and forth, the drummer started going boom, boom to the rhythm as he was going back and forth. And I just remember Brendan getting angrier and angrier as they started to chant along with him. And I tell you what, that sticks out in my mind.
Oh, that's brutal. Yeah,
That's
you
tough.
don't. I'm putting myself in that situation. I can see how he feels. Yeah,
I think he was wiping it with his strong arm too. I think he had a strong.
yeah. He was kind of like a weightlifter kind of guy. He played football in high school. Yeah. Oh man.
Sorry, Pete. Go ahead.
No, you guys had another big game that season, or a big opponent, I should say. A top 10 team, Gonzaga, came into the Scott Trade Center at the time with Adam Morrison, and that was a tough loss, a 3-point loss. What do you remember about that game?
I remember we played a triangle and 2 against them, low scoring game. I want to say it was in the 50s.
60 to 57.
Okay, 60 to 57. I missed a 3 at the buzzer to tie the game, and I missed a lot of threes that game, I remember. In fact, I was probably 1 for 10 that game or something, 0 of 8 or from 3 or 1 of something like that.
1 of 5 from 3 and 2 of or 1 of 7 from the field. So
okay, there you go.
Sorry.
But I don't know if Drea got hurt that game.
I believe he did.
So
yeah, he did because he mentioned it on the other show. I remember that. Yeah.
And I mean, if he was playing, he said we probably would have won, right?
That's exactly what he said. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean,
I'm joking. But yeah, that was a really fun game. We had a great. They had a really good team. Derek Ravio, who could shoot the ball. Adam Morrison, JP Batista, I think. So they had a ton of pieces there. And we had a great, obviously Coach Soderberg with his defense was pretty unbelievable. And it was a typical grinded out SLU game at that time.
He said, Drea, I think said Morrison talked a lot of shit that game, or he was whining, one of the two, maybe both.
Yeah, probably both. I probably didn't hear much, but he didn't really get going. He might have had a few shots late in the game. But yeah, we guarded him pretty tough.
Pete, did you have? I think you.
No follow up on that. I was just going to say I forgot that this was the season where you guys went win loss, alternating for the first 19 games, which it was such a weird season that way. And then you kind of fell into a little bit more of a rhythm in the A10, like Zach said, finished third. So yeah, I was just looking at the schedule and seeing what kind of an odd season that was.
Yeah, now that you mention it, that's exactly right. I remember that point being made, but geez, without you guys here, I wouldn't remember any of that stuff. So I think you're just prompting me. Yeah.
To be fair, I don't necessarily remember a lot of it. I just kind of, go deep dive into Sports Reference, and I'll get on that for like 5 hours and just lose myself in it. Entering A10 play for the first time. This is obviously the first year in the A10. When I talked with Drea, he mentioned a lot about how he just felt like you guys could go in and should be beating the teams in the A10 coming from Conference USA. Did you kind of have that attitude, or were you more, kind of, I won't say less cocky, but like, less like, yeah, we got this. Like, how did you feel?
Yeah, I think for me it was, I never played in Conference USA. They're obviously good teams, Louisville, Cincinnati, all that. But then you look at the A10, you had, Dayton, Xavier, UMass, Temple. Like you had a lot of really, really good teams, Rhode Island, that it's not necessarily a walk in the park. It's probably maybe it's a bit more structured with less athletes and talent, but that doesn't necessarily make games easier to win. I don't know if I can relate as much because I never did play in the Conference USA.
I've gotten to know Chris Sloan over the last couple of years, and when he came on the house that Rick built, he mentioned the Billiken Blockbuster Network. He mentioned you were a big fan. Tell us about that.
What was it again?
The movie channel on SLU TV. He said you were a big fan of it.
He'd have to remind me. Jeez. Yeah, the movie channel.
He said you used to maybe record the movies off there, I think. Is that what it was?
There's a possibility. I don't know. Maybe I've chosen to not remember that part of my journey at SLU, but Chris has just an impeccable memory that whatever he says must go. The guy lands on his feet.
It's funny because Mike Weiss also mentioned that you guys had a group of like 7 or 8 guys who would get together and order a movie every time you went on the road. It was like your little road movie club.
I'm not going to put out names here, Luke Meyer, but there were certain guys on our team who really enjoyed movies.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh my God.
So you had a kind of over the years, you had a couple injuries that really stood out as sort of memorable. And actually, we had on Tony Breitbach, the former head athletic trainer, who's still on the faculty at SLU, to interview him a couple months ago. And he was like, it's HIPAA rules. I can't really talk about this stuff. But he did say the one, yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Your hand. What's the story with that? How did that happen? And what was the recovery from that like?
So I was guarding a guy. I think it was a non-conference game, and I was defending him like this. He went to throw a pass. He threw it, and his hand just sliced right through my webbing there, and sliced down and down. And I think a couple games later we played George Washington or North Carolina at home as well. So I had my hand all bandaged up and everything. But the problem is that skin, once it becomes separated like that, it's in that spot, it just kept splitting open. So it made it really difficult. I eventually had to get a surgery, but Tony was famous for the check rein, he calls it, that you can't tape these fingers together because trying to shoot like that is not very, it's hard to do. So he came up with or I don't know if it's a physiotherapy thing where you tape them like this with a gap in the middle. And I tell you what, I went my entire professional career after, I didn't go a single practice or game without taping it like that. It just became kind of a mental thing for me. And in fact, Tony came and visited me in Spain, and I was like, I'm still doing it, So, yeah, it was pretty cool. But yeah, that was an injury that definitely stood out in my mind because it affected a lot of the shooting.
Yeah, so that's your shooting hand, right? I mean, how long do you feel like it took for you to kind of get comfortable with your shot again?
Well, I mean, it took a while. I had to let the stitches heal the first time, but then I got it cut open again. And I mean, that was an ongoing thing probably for a month or two. And then I finally got used to just taping it, the correct width apart. And I remember I was compulsive. It had to be perfect. So yeah, it took a while, but I stuck with it ever since.
Did that affect like eating and stuff? Because like me, I'm just like I know that like if I have something on my hand, like an open anything on my hands, like I am always getting random things just burning it. Like did that bother you off the court as well too?
Well, I wouldn't tape it off the court, so
Well,
that it was just
I just meant like just everyday tasks. Like if you're doing dishes or whatever, you put your hand in the hot water. Wow, that can't feel good.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It was a weird yet it was a painful and inconvenient injury, really. Just one of those weird things where, I mean, you could see right down to the fat and the almost the bone, but it was just, yeah, it was a weird thing.
Did any like physios in Australia or France or anybody like talk to you about that? Like what they look at the way you tape your finger, like what? Like
Yeah, they'd be like, what are you doing? I said, oh, don't worry about it. I said it works. So no, I said, I've gotten it split before, and so, but yeah, I just went about it myself, which is it's pretty normal overseas, anyways.
um how about that how about the time you got bloodied up pretty good? There's kind of that famous photo. I've seen it, a million times. Do you remember that game and what can you tell us about that?
Are you talking when I got hit in the
Yep.
nose?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was against Boston College, at home, and I had 0 points in the first half. I got it hit in the first half, I think, and then we were losing and stuff. Went in at halftime or right before, got it stitched up. I think I finished with 16 points, whatever, but and we ended up winning and stuff. But yeah, I do remember, I think it was an elbow or something. I don't exactly remember how it happened, but might have knocked some sense into me to get me going a bit.
So your sophomore year, it's kind of an opposite story of your freshman year in that you guys had a really good non-conference. You went 10-3. Only losses, were to Carbondale, and then you played two top 12 teams. The return game on UNC when Tyler Hansborough came home and it was full of Poplar Bluff fans, and then Texas A&M down on the road in Texas. But then you in A10 play, you guys were 500. So it was more of like it felt like you were playing your best basketball early on, and then just kind of uh, you know average after that. What do you remember about the arc of that season?
Yeah, I don't remember much of the conference stuff besides what you talk about. I remember the game against UNC, the game against Texas A&M, which was in a tournament, I believe, and we lost to them, and they had AC Law and a
Yeah.
really good team. And but yeah, I just remember conference play was we didn't live up to expectations. I think we still finished what, maybe 20-14 that year, or
20 and
20
13.
and 13, yeah.
20-13. Um, but yeah, we who did we lose to in the conference tournament? Probably Xavier or something like that. I don't know.
GW.
GW.
That was what's his name? The short Carl Hobbs and Pops
Rice.
Mensavansu, all
Yeah.
those. Yeah.
Yep.
It,
Yep.
it was in
Or
the third.
no.
Yeah, it was in the third round of the A10
Yeah, yeah,
tournament
yeah.
too.
Ah, yes. Okay. So yeah, it's funny, the conference play that year, I don't remember much about it.
Was it, one of the games I was at was that UNC game,
Mhm.
which was like Scottrade was, I don't think it was quite sold out, but it was full of Poplar Bluff fans. Like the whole town came up for Hansborough. What's it like playing at home in front of a hostile crowd?
Yeah, I think it was just cool looking up, in there, what, 23,000 people there. And I think, like, at that point you were like, I don't care who they're for. They just came to see the game. So I think that was pretty much more the mindset. And and they beat us. We didn't necessarily play great or anything, but they had a good team at that time. Ty Lawson and Hansbrough. He would have been what was he? Junior, senior, something like that. But yeah,
Sophomore.
the crowd was pretty amazing. I remember that.
As a fan, Peter read my mind. I think, I don't know how he did it, but I think he read my mind on that one. As a fan, like I know that whenever, the opposite team's fans kind of invade, it really just like gets under my skin. Are there any guys on the team that were that way for that kind of game? Like the Gonzaga game was kind of similar too, in that there were just was there anybody that kind of was, like, let's beat these?
I don't remember. I don't remember that, and I'm sure there were, and there were probably the upperclassmen who had been through a lot. But like I said, I was just excited there were that many people there, and then at the end of the day, if you want to, you gotta prove yourselves to for them to come and cheer for you, even though it is a home game, but you're playing a big time team. So I get it.
I kind of want to transition because North Carolina led into a game at home against Ole Miss, and the first game of the A10 plays on the road at St. Bonaventure. And one of the hallmarks of my interviews are Olean travel stories. Did you? Because it's a pain in the ass to get up there. Everyone knows it. Any good travel stories going all the way out there to Olean, New York?
No, because St. Bonaventure, they were always a team, no matter how good or bad they were, we struggled to beat. And it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like you don't even know you're in New York, I guess. If you are still. And yeah, I don't remember much about, their uniforms are brown. Like no offense, but like you don't remember much.
Yeah. I mean, I can't, I'm imagining Drea heading to the casino and, where you guys stayed, and nothing like, but no buses getting lost, anything like that.
I got nothing for you there. And like I said, maybe that's something I need to go back and meditate upon, but no,
I don't think
really
that.
have anything.
Yeah, I don't think they were staying at the casino yet in those
Uh,
early days. There's
uh,
later teams. There's a casino about 30 minutes west of there, and they now
Oh,
stay
is there?
there. Yeah, so it's like a
Okay.
big casino resort, and they stay there instead of staying at the little Fairfield Inn in town.
Now, if we're talking about our once Majerus took over the Atlantic City conference end of tournament there, now there's a bit of material there, but
well,
Well, let's go.
let's
Yeah,
go. We're here for stories, man.
so well, it's funny. It was my brother's first year, and the A10 moved the conference tournament to Atlantic City, which is obviously a really brilliant, smart move for a bunch of college guys. So we get knocked out fairly early, I think. This would have been my senior year because my brother was a freshman. He was there. And we come back to the hotel, which was more like a golf course resort, probably 25 minutes from Atlantic City. And we were like, well, season's over. Majerus just gets out of there. You don't see him again. And, or where were we staying at? I don't even remember. So we were like, well, let's get into the casino. And we were like, how are we going to get there? So I'm pretty sure we ordered a limo because it was the cheapest option. so take a limo out there and have our fun playing. I think the other one I was thinking of when we stayed in, I have way too many Majerus stories too, so don't let me get carried away. But we were staying in Las Vegas for a Thanksgiving or a Christmas tournament. And the tournament was over. Majerus left right away, but he still had his penthouse there, which somehow the manager and my brother got the keys for, so we went all up in there and got together and just had a nice little party. But that wasn't before we arrived. They didn't have our rooms ready. It was like the Marriott. And Majerus goes, "What do you mean you don't have our rooms ready? I've got the most Marriott points in the world," or something like that, because he obviously lived his life in a hotel. So yeah, there are a few interesting stories for you there.
We may have to get you back in a couple of months just to do about an hour of Majerus stories.
I have so many because my old teammate, now the owner of our team here, Andrew Bogut, he had Majerus at Utah for a year. So him and I constantly share our Majerus stories back and forth, and they bring up new memories.
So that's kind of actually, that's in our timeline, that's about where we are, because at the end of your sophomore year, you guys do go 20-13. And then I think it was kind of a surprise to a lot of people that Soderberg was let go at the end of that season. Was that just a complete shock? What's this period like for the team?
Yeah, I think it was a big shock. Now the Chaifetz Arena was just starting to get built, and it was kind of like a new time in basketball. And I absolutely loved Coach Soderberg and Jason Grunkemeyer, AT, all those guys. So yeah, it was a shock and really surprising. But I think they wanted to, Father Biondi and all that, we just wanted a new, fresh start, a big name to come in and really get interest back again or whatever. So I guess that was the rationale behind it. But yeah, I think it was a big shock to a lot of us, and I definitely considered transferring as well at the time. So
walk us through that. Sorry, Pete. Walk us through that. Kind of thought process, and what ultimately led you to stick around.
Well, I think it was probably just the hassle of having to sit out a year if I transferred, because who was it? Sean Miller at Xavier at the time, I think, contacted the assistant and said, "What's Kevin going to do? We'd like to have him here. He can spend a year behind Drew Lavender and learn from him, and then take over." And obviously that was tempting with the program they had, but then I was like, no, I've committed to SLU. I love it here. I love it close to home. So I want to stick this thing out. And, obviously I'm glad I did. And I think either way would have worked out great.
So you mentioned your good relationship with Soderberg and his staff. Having spent 3 years under Soderberg myself, I know that he and Majerus could not be any more different.
Yeah.
Brad is a really reserved mannered guy, a little bit of like kind of an introvert, a homebody. What were your first impressions of Rick Majerus? And by then, had you already decided to stay, or did you kind of question that, or what?
I think by then I had already decided to stay. And I knew, in my personality is more close to Coach Soderberg. I'd see him at morning mass in the chapel,
Mm-hmm.
and we were pretty similar and saw eye to eye on a lot of stuff. And then, yeah, I remember Majerus walking in, and I knew some things about him. And then you read some more, and then you stopped reading because you wanted to make your own judgments. And I think it was around that time Sports Illustrated had come out with a pretty scathing article or whatever. But I remember he came in, and it's funny when you look at it now, looking back, it's like he did some amazing things when he first came, even though he pretty much told Tommy and I'm like your stepdad. I didn't choose you and you didn't choose me. So let's just work through it. But I get it. And looking back, I'm grateful to have played for both of them, and I learned a lot from both of them. And Majerus was something else. And while at times I hated it, I also loved it, and I'm grateful when I look back at how much I learned, really.
I'm curious. You and Tommy were pretty close, as you mentioned before, and looking at kind of Tommy's playing style and maybe Tommy's personality. Did any of that relationship kind of strain what with Majerus being, it seems like maybe your playing style and your kind of style as a player and personality would maybe be more suited to a transition to Majerus and maybe you buy in quicker. Um, did your guys' relationship go under any kind of strain because of it, or no?
No, it didn't go under any strain at all, actually. I think all of us were just trying to keep our heads above water for air, to be honest. Um, and it's tough. Like you got to look at it from Majerus's standpoint too. He's probably coming in and saying, okay, SLU hasn't been a top 25 team. They haven't made it to the tournament in so long. These guys don't know what it's about. I got to come here and clean up. Like, I get it. It makes sense. And in fact, that's what he did in the long run, you know? So being in that transition period was really tough. Um, yeah, I mean, he would call me still the Bellevue 8 dribble, you over dribble, the village idiot at times, all that stuff. But which is hilarious looking back. But like I totally get it from his perspective that he needed to come in and make changes and put his stamp on the program. And this is the same guy who wrote me after the my first year playing professionally, Majerus, wrote me a letter saying, Kev, I just want you to know I enjoyed everything, you're in my top 10 favorite players of all time to coach. And that's what you're going to get from him. I wasn't his top 3, I wasn't his top 5, I wasn't top 20, I was top 10, you know. So I think where you stick with Majerus, and by the end I probably got pushed out to top 20 or 30, but I'll take it.
One of the hardest things in that period as fans to watch was it kind of felt like Majerus was so focused. I know, and he said this, he only cared about practice. He was so focused on teaching, and he said it's going to take at least 3 years of just pure teaching, instruction, getting them right in practice. But that meant that the junior and senior year for you and Tommy, I don't want to say they got wasted, because obviously there were some ups to go with any downs and everything, but he was not focused on results at all. And that was hard for us as fans, because we felt like we've got 2 great local players. Like, we really want to see these guys get a shot at a tournament. And we never really got that chance. Do you look back at that and like, do you think, we were so close to being a tournament team? Or do you think like, it was just his instructional period and it was never going to happen? I mean, how do you kind of high level look at that time with his early years there?
Yeah, I looked at it as Soderberg, we were definitely building to get to that tournament team. And then when Majerus came, it plateaued, obviously. But once again, looking at it from his angle, if he wanted to build it into a top 15 program like he did, he had to do that. There's no other way to go about building a successful program than having to look at the long term, So while it is tough for us, in the end, when you have, Conklin and Jordair Jed and those guys really, really, I guess, I don't want to say reaping the benefits of his system, like you had to go through that. It's not like, oh, we'll slowly ease into my way of doing stuff. No, he's going to teach it right his way from the beginning. And I respect that. And I think that's the thing, as frustrating and as much as at times I hated it, I think you can see now as a coach, you do have to have that big picture in mind. And not that we weren't sacrificial lambs. I still had fun playing at times. But and I still learned a lot, but there's got to be a process. And I was going to say that was the thing I respected the most. No matter how the game was, he kept the same consistent attitude of this is how we're going to go about it. And yeah, it was tough, but in the end, it did pay off, I think.
I think that's the perfect segue into one of the most unusual games in Billiken history.
Oh, George Washington.
Yes, you got it. The game that caused me to walk out of not Fuzzy's, Iggy's Mexican restaurant without paying my bill by accident. I was so annoyed. Talk to me about that game. Just walk me through it. I'm giving you the floor because I really don't have questions that'll probably elicit anything better than your memory of that game.
Oh my gosh. I remember Bryce Hushak was our leading scorer with 5 points, I think.
Great College Hoops 2K8 player though. Great on College Hoops 2K8. Love Bryce in that video game, by the way. Let's throw that in there.
I remember that I scored my 1,000th point that game. I had 2 points that game. I think I was at 998 and I scored, and then obviously just shut it down after that, right? We had 7 points at halftime. We couldn't hit a three. Majerus and I think we got in a little fight at one of the timeouts. It was just incredible. Like, I can't even describe it. But the thing is, we held them to 49 points. Pretty good defense, huh? Talk about not letting your offense affect your defense. I mean, there you go. But I remember calling my mom after the game. I said, Mom, I think we set the record for the fewest points at GW's arena there. She said, yeah, and in the country history ever too. I was like, oh, okay. But then I remember getting back and turning on Sports Center, and here's all the people who scored 20 or more points individually versus St. Louis U. Next day you go to your big class in the auditorium, 100 people. You're not wearing any St. Louis basketball gear. You just sneak in the back. The teacher goes, Kevin, how are you? He said, were you at that game the other day? I said, no, I wasn't there. But yeah, it was crazy. And looking back, it's pretty funny.
What was the little rift in the timeout?
Oh, I think one of their guys, Rice, pushed off and got to get an open three, and Majerus was like, you gotta lock and trail him. You gotta lock and trail him. I said, all right. He kept egging me on. I said, he pushed off. And then he was like, oh, Kevin, he pushed off. Are you okay? He started doing all that. And then I just got up and I don't know. It was all fluff, but yeah.
You mentioned 7 points at halftime. And obviously Majerus kept with his system and wasn't going to change for anybody. What was the mood among the players like? Maybe irrespective of Majerus.
It was like he had such a I don't know. We were all just kind of deer in the headlights. We were like, geez, we got to watch this on film now. So the thing was, after the game, you wouldn't know if we would have won by 20 or scored 20. And then we fly back, we go through, the first half on film, and going through it in a non-emotional way, but a teaching way. And yeah, it was just crazy, that game.
I mean, that season overall was, it's his first season, and you finish one game over 500 actually. Like I said before, you kind of had your ups and downs, and then lost a kind of a heartbreaker to Dayton in the A10 tournament. By the time you got to the A10 tournament, was there any thought like, were you guys feeling like you could have made a little noise or a little run?
Oh, I don't remember what the thought was. It was probably, we probably felt mentally out of gas at that point. I think everything we'd gone through, but yeah, I think at the same time, because of, the scouting and the attention to detail, we were a dangerous team to these other teams just because of the way we played, our style. We played hard, um and yeah, we were still trying to definitely find ourselves, you know, which took a while.
I want to jump back, sorry, in our timeline. The Xavier game that year at Scottrade, I remember that was a big game. I think they bust kids, a bunch of kids over. Xavier was number 13 in the country at the time. You scored, I think, 12 points in the final minute. You kind of had a like just a blinder and just went at it, and then only to have Derek Brown score on a tip in on the last second. Run me through those 12 points, man. Like what's going through your mind when you just kind of take over a game like that?
Well, it was a case of, okay, we didn't have to run the motion offense and set flares and do all this stuff for a while. So I just remember getting the ball, bringing it down. I'd get a couple, drag screens, double drag screens, and just come off and look to jack up some threes, which I did. I think I got to the basket once or twice for an and one. So yeah, I just remember playing pretty free, and that's how. I mean, to be honest, that's I needed to find a balance, I think, in Majerus' system, playing free, but within the structure. And I think, those times were me just kind of letting it go and just playing.
Yeah, you had let's see, 52 seconds left. You made a 3-pointer. 39 seconds, you made another 3-pointer, and then 28 seconds, you made a third 3-pointer in a row, and then added a 2-point you added a layup, and then made a free throw to tie the game, and then Brown, of course,
yeah, tipping.
Yeah. So I mean, like I can't I don't remember specifically, but I gotta imagine Scottrade was going nuts by that third 3-pointer.
Yeah, because what did we tie it up? I think after being down, or it was
Yeah,
it was
there was a comeback in there.
Well, I think part of what I remember about that one is because the comeback happened in such a compressed timeline and so late that there were people heading to their cars, like kind of trying to beat traffic early. So what I remember was kind of people scrambling back in. Like as they're walking out, they see on the monitor, like, oh, wait a minute, we're only down 6. And there's like, 39 seconds left or whatever. So that's kind of what I remember about that one.
Yeah. No, I vaguely, remember it, but yeah, definitely came up short there.
So
They had a good team though.
Oh, go ahead, Zach. Go ahead.
No, I will. I actually kind of, I'll save that. I had a question, but I'll save it to the end of senior year.
We know, Majerus himself could be a tough guy to deal with, and you've kind of given us that dynamic a little bit. What about his assistants? Those 2 years you were there, what kind of relationship did you have with those guys? Because I want to say Alex Jensen and Porter Moser, and I know Angus Thorpe hung around for a year. What were your relationships like with those guys, and did that kind of help keep the players a little, more sane in dealing with Rick?
Yeah, I think I really liked Al Jensen a lot. And in fact, we played Sydney Kings a couple years ago. We played the Utah Jazz and NBL versus NBA thing. So I got to catch up with Al and see him there because he's assistant with the Jazz. So yeah, loved Al. Porter Moser was great. AT Paul Biancardi, who might have come the year after, but yeah, those guys were good. They were Paul and Porter were obviously former head coaches too, so we had a lot of firepower on the the assistant coaches, and it was great. But a funny story with Porter, I remember Majerus missed one of our games in Rhode Island because I think his I forgot what happened for personal reasons. So Porter coached that game. We lost. Porter got teed up or whatever, And I remember, because Porter was, now he's energetic. I don't want to say hyper, but just energetic
Yeah.
and passionate and different to how Majerus coached. And in film the other day, Majerus took after the game, Majerus took his highlighter and said, "Oh, and see Porter, he gets too emotional during the games. He won't be able to be a successful coach like that, or whatever." And I look now and I'm like, Porter, you're pretty successful right now, and stick to who you are. And I guess each to their own, right? But that was just a funny story I remember.
What kind of role did Angus Thorpe play on that staff, being the holdover?
Yeah, AT was in a tough position. I don't remember much, but I don't think he probably had a very prevalent role, because once again, it was, in with the new, out with the old, pretty much, and AT just found himself in a tough position. So yeah, I don't think it was probably ideal for either side, really.
So, we move on to your senior year, which was kind of another up and down year. And I know, at this point, Majerus is still teaching fundamentals and things like that. One game that stood out to me here was you guys had a triple overtime win at Richmond, and you scored 27. What can you tell us about that game?
Yeah, I remember Quamain also had a good game. He scored in the 20s that game, I think, as well. I think I hit a three at the end of the second overtime, or first, or regular one, something to send it into overtime again, and it came up with a great win. We got back to locker room, and Majerus starts talking, and Porter's like, "Coach, that's great, but we need to catch this flight." So yeah, we just hurried out of there and got on the flight. But I remember, yeah, I think I played like 52 minutes or something like that.
You, Kwame, and Tommy all played 50 or more minutes.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember it was a pretty cool win.
Talk to me about Kwame. Kwame's freshman year, he comes in. Now, obviously, he has kind of um, uh, he's a very popular, former player, I guess. Talk to me about meeting freshman Kwame and kind of getting to know him.
Yeah, he was really talented, great, feel for the game, athletic, and I always had a great relationship with Quamain, and I was happy for him because he was also Majerus's recruit, which I think helped his development as well. Whereas, he wasn't one of the stepsons, so he was able to really grow and to flourish in his role, and he had a wonderful career at SLU, and we always had a great relationship. He was always smiling and just a yeah, just a nice guy. So and I don't know if he's still playing, but yeah, he played pretty well overseas for a while as well.
I think
When
he's
you look at you mentioned the whole stepson thing and Rick's guys, that roster is really stark at the transition because it's you and Tommy and Barry as the seniors, and then it's basically all freshmen after that. You've got Mitchell, Reed, Conklin, Thompson, Cassidy, and Kodo. So Rick brings in this big freshman class that year. Was there did he kind of, other than kind of the label of the stepsons and then his guys, do you feel like he treated people different, or what? Or was everybody kind of still treated the same in terms of his teaching methods?
I think no, I think he still taught everyone the same, but he knew the guys who had potential to really grow in his system, and who he could really develop. So he obviously fostered probably that growth a bit more. Whereas, some of these other guys, he knew they weren't going to be around the 4 years, because a college scholarship is really only a year-to-year thing. I think it was, and like we talk about again, you can't fault him for any of this stuff because his job was to come in and build a top 25 program. And you can't do that by trying to keep everyone happy and do all this. I think he was fair, but brutally honest, and and that's just kind of how it was.
When you looked at those freshmen, like Kwame and Willie and Brian Conklin, did you kind of see like, okay, these guys are going to be really good players? Like, could you individually tell with some of them that they were kind of already on their way?
I could tell Kwame was, yes. Willie, I could not. And Brian, I could just tell he worked hard, but he really developed. And then I think Willie was probably the biggest surprise for me, how he, developed under Majerus as well. So, so he definitely had a knack for that in getting guys to just buy in and play hard together.
Kyle Cassidy, I spent a lot of time getting to know him at SLU and then after SLU. And then of course he came on the podcast that I did before this. He's a little more country than you, but he also came from the east side of the river.
Pinckneyville.
Yes. If you blink, you'll miss it. Tamaroa, America, little slice of heaven. Talk to me about getting to know him, because any good stories of him as a friend? Because I know he liked to have his fun out off the court.
Yeah, I don't want to say I was a pretty boring guy, but I had my fun as well. Kyle was just, I guess your down home country guy, always a laid back smile on his face. I think that's the thing I remember the most about him. Just really laid back and always smiling, and he'd play hard and get them rosy red cheeks while he was out there. But that's what I remember a lot about Kyle.
What was the dynamic like? Because this was the only season you said you played with your brother at SLU as well. What was it like having him around the program, and what was his role? Because he didn't really play, or at least get any game time that season.
So he came in, and Majerus said, "Hey, Danny," he said, "I love your work ethic. You're talented, but you can't, probably play at this level, whatever." He said, "I'll offer you scholarship but you can be a redshirt freshman, so you don't lose any eligibility." And Dan was like, "Yeah, that's a great, opportunity." So, those walk-ons and those redshirt guys who didn't play, I got a whole, Femi John, he was I think a redshirt at one time. These guys Daniel would get beat up guarding me at practice every day by Brian Conklin picks and stuff like that, but he just kept going. Yeah, I remember Majerus always going, "Guys, I wish you had Danny's heart," and it was Daniel actually roomed with Ruben Cotto, and the one practice Ruben Cotto walked off and we never saw him again until I played against him in the Puerto Rican League. Dan was like, "Man, I came in as a redshirt freshman, and now I got my own apartment to myself." So, yeah, he just worked his butt off in the weight room, everything, and Majerus just loved him, and so Alex Jensen and him were pretty close.
You mentioned Ruben Cotto, and that's kind of one of those like unsolved mysteries of St. Louis University. What happened to Ruben Cotto? Why did he walk off? If you care to tell us.
I think Ruben. So I played against Ruben in Puerto Rico when I played there a little. Now the Puerto Rican way is a much different. It's run and gun. It's up and down. It's, everyone can at times be a hot mess. It's a lot of fun, but it can be unstructured. And I think Ruben just really struggled with that amount of structure. And I think, the writing was on the wall. He had just had enough. And and that was it, really.
You mentioned trouble with structure. And I guess we can slide into the Willie Reed kind of saga with SLU. Um, we've heard that, maybe he had, I don't want to talk ill about it because he's done well for himself, but talk to me about Willie Reed as a freshman and kind of um, impression of him as a player.
Yeah, I would compare him to like um, a baby deer or something like that, a fawn who's just learning to walk. You had this long, gangly guy all over the place, um, probably like not growing up mentally or physically yet, and 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 that's why I say by the end of it, when you looked at his career and what he's done now, like it's pretty amazing how much he's developed and worked at it. And even now, like you hear him speak in the media and stuff, he's very well spoken and like his development from a freshman to where he is now was pretty amazing. So, but yeah, he was like a baby deer coming in.
I know there were stories about, they had to get the managers to hound him for, protein shakes and, get him to really push to get better early on, especially. So it is great to see him carve out a nice little career for himself. I think we've come to the end of your time at SLU. Just, looking back at all time, you finished sixth in points, second in 3-pointers, seventh in 3-point percentage, eighth in free throw percentage, ninth in steals, fourth in minutes. I think all accumulated in that Richmond game. Um, uh, and your class, and you have numerous season and class records. You're a member of the SLU Hall of Fame. But before we get to kind of on the court stuff, I want to talk about having your sister at SLU at the same time as you, and being a better player. No, no, yeah. What was it like? Were you in her ear to kind of come to SLU, or how did she kind of come about that decision? And again, we got to get her on to talk about, because she is easily one of the best women's basketball players there. Hey, one of the best basketball players to come through SLU.
Yeah. Well, I remember shooting free throws against St. Joe's and the guards going to me, "Your sister's better than you. You know that, right?" I'm thinking, yeah, all right. But I don't really remember how she decided upon SLU because, she had some other schools as well. But um, yeah, her career there was pretty amazing in the 3 years, and in what she did there was really quite amazing. Um, and yeah, like I said, I don't. Let's see, who was the coach? They had Jill Pizzotti, and then
Yep.
she
Shimmy.
left, and then it was Shimmy Gray Miller. So yeah, Teresa had and in fact, Majerus let me know. He would tell me times. He said, "Your sister does a better job at this than you do, Kevin. I wish I'd be coaching her instead of you, So, I think Majerus even saw those things, things in her. But yeah, as for how she got there, I think once again it was just an easy transition from where she was to just coming to SLU.
Did you, were you guys there at the same time for 3 years together? Do I have the,
Yes, 3 years
okay.
together. That's right.
So were you just hanging out on campus all the time, having meals, stuff like that?
Occasionally, we all lived in the Grand Forest apartments where all the athletes did, but occasionally we would eat and hang out, but it wasn't like it was a family affair. I mean, we shared a car there. In fact, she drove the car. She used it for groceries. She parks it in a loading zone, no parking, unpacks it, puts her flashers on, forgets the car there, leaves for an away trip on a plane. And I'm like, "Teresa, where's the car?" And she's like, "What do you mean?" And well, sure enough, they towed it away to their place. I go there. I can't even start the thing because she left the the flashers on. But so we
Wow.
have little stories like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I guess so at one time, all three of us, my brother, my sister, and myself were there. I think that's how it was at one
Yeah,
time.
for it must have been your senior year. And then
Yep.
but that also wound up being her last year, right? Because she
Yeah.
opted out of her senior year. By then, was she already with Trent Meacham, former Illinois star?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
He was I think they had just gotten engaged and to be honest, I think she had gotten kind of burnt out and
Yeah.
off basketball. She wasn't having fun and enjoying it. And yeah, obviously, she loved Trent and they got married and then he went overseas to play and she went with him. So
There's a
So,
there's obviously that the documentary, The Gray Seasons. I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't.
It follows I think kind of 3 or 4 years under Shimmy Gray Miller.
Okay.
Kind of the trials and tribulations. And then there were many of them. So you can kind of see that progression. But did she talk to you about quitting? Like, I gotta imagine you two had some conversation. I can't, what was your kind of thoughts?
And that's one thing I've looked back upon and I probably wasn't always the best big brother at the time because I was so caught up in in the playing for Majerus and the mental, and keeping that down that I became just, you know, I guess really tunnel vision and didn't necessarily look out and say, oh, she probably needs a bit of help or someone to talk to. So I can't really say I was there for her to the best that I could have been, and that was unfortunate. Yes, we did. I remember, we went for a couple walks and she'd talk and that kind of stuff. And we both would, but probably not to the extent to what she needed. And I'm happy, like she made the best decision ever marrying Trent and going.
so at this point in your career, it's that kind of that weird 2 or 3 month period after your basketball season ends and before you graduate. Are you doing any pre-draft workouts? Are you talking to agents? What's this process like, the transition from SLU to the pros for you?
Yeah, I got an agent and he was based in Indianapolis, so I would go there to work out and in fact I did a little workout with the Pacers and I remember Larry Bird was there, so I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Um, so yeah, went through all that, but my assistant coach at SLU, Chris Harriman,
Mhm.
he's actually from Australia, and he knew the coach of one of the teams out here, Perth, and one thing led to another, and I was on a plane ride, the furthest part in the world you could go from home, really.
The Perth Wildcats.
Yes.
You
And
you
guys, sorry, I'll have to get going in 5 minutes here.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah, no problem.
Is that a
Anything?
problem?
Oh,
Sorry.
not at
No,
all.
that's
No,
fine.
no big deal. Um,
But
Pete,
maybe we
let's
can pick it up then
yeah,
again
yeah, let's
because
let's
I'm
just
I'm enjoying talking about these old times here.
let's keep going just on down the timeline, Pete, and we'll come back to
Yeah, I mean,
pick.
if we can reschedule, I mean, if you want to do like another
Yeah,
30, 45 minutes or
yeah,
so, just wrap it up.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, Talk about kind of traveling all over the world, and how you get linked up with a team in Puerto Rico or JSF Nanterre in France, where you teamed up with Trent, or over in Spain with Zaragoza. How do you end up with these teams all over the planet?
Well, I think obviously I played in Perth for 4 years, had played decent over there. You get a good agent who's really well connected, and then once you go from place to place and you're successful, your team's successful, but not only that, they start asking around, what's this guy like? Because you can get, and I've had it on both sides, you can get it where you have imports that are just the best guys you could ever have, or you could have imports that are just cancers to a team. And once you get those labels either way, it determines a lot whether you can get jobs or not. So I think for me, getting a good agent, but then just you work your butt off and you do some good things to help your team win, and yeah, opportunities start to open up.
When you're playing in Puerto Rico, in 2013 and 2016, are those kind of just in between your Australian and other pro seasons? Is it kind of like I don't know if it's summer or winter or whatever the off season is. It looks like those were kind of wedged in between your other.
Exactly. So those seasons are in the summer. So they're kind of, I guess if you want to call them top ups to your playing or whatever. And it's just an opportunity to keep playing a different league. And I had some of my most fun basketball playing in Puerto Rico. So, but yeah, those are in between. So those are almost like half seasons, I guess, or not even.
Kevin, we'll wrap it up for you here, and then maybe we can, in a couple, maybe late summer, get back together, do another hour and a half.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Because there is an hour and a half, 2 hours just on your Olympic journey. And of course, I want to talk more about the Sydney Kings.
Yeah, I saw that up there.
I didn't know if that was too on the nose or not.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome.
No,
I didn't see it right away, and then I saw it after.
Yeah,
I apologize, guys.
I know
to.
that's my fault. I scheduled it for an hour and a half, so
No.
but I mean, I've done 3 hours, 3.5 hours with Cody before, on the same.
I would have loved to. We just had another Zoom meeting scheduled.
You're good. You're great.
Yeah, we don't have to go another full.
Yeah,
it's whatever time you have left, but we would like to cover more.
Honestly, I feel like I'm just having a conversation here and talking and reminiscing. So
yeah,
I feel like I should be having a coffee and just sipping it, because that's
bring the coffee next time, man.
Yeah, I will. Or the wine. We'll see what time.
Yeah.
This has been
not
unbelievable. So yes, no. I mean, with me having to go to work, maybe. Hey, Kevin, we'll talk soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much, man. This has been incredible.
No, thank you guys, and just email me, and I'll send you my number so you can even iMessage or WhatsApp.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Yep.
Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.